Hey, welcome back to the Health Bridge. Dr. Pedram Shojai here today to talk about minerals and health with Wendy Myers. Wendy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you and I got to have a very interesting series of conversations about minerals and adrenal health, and we also started talking about toxicity and all the things that start to bubble up in modern human life, and really a lot of the unfortunate stuff that's happening around our health and kind of the toxic world we live in. I mean, it's really, the movie I made called Origins really spoke to this, and you know, I see it very close to home with patients and people all the time. And so I know that this is something that you've specialized in. You've worked with hundreds of people in finding what heavy metals are binding and creating problems in our health. And that's why I invited you in today. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love to talk metal toxicity and minerals.
Yeah, so one of the things that I have read a lot about has been, you know, this obviously the rise in autism and children kind of, you know, heading onto the spectrum, and a lot of what I've seen some literature on, and obviously this is really kind of a hot, kind of debatable subject in general, right? But is that, you know, everyone's blaming the vaccines, but it's more kind of the milieu, right? It's all the stuff that we're already saddled with, and oftentimes it might be a vaccine that just kind of throws a kid over into kind of unacceptable ranges, and the body can't function anymore. So I'd love to start by talking about what these heavy metals are doing and why it's such a big deal.
Well, the entire population on the planet, including that vulnerable population, children with autism, we are all exposed every day to dozens of heavy metals, and there's about over 80,000 chemicals in the environment. Some estimates are up to 100,000. So obviously these are, you know, very detrimentally affecting our health. I believe they're the true underlying causes of disease. You know, genetics are the gun, and the environment, toxic environment, is the trigger. And when it comes to heavy metals, you know, I do lots of heavy metal testing on my clients using hair mineral analysis. I've done over 1,000 hair mineral analyses, and I'm now adding the urine metals analysis to my practice because you can see more metals than some people can't deposit metals on a hair mineral analysis. So the metals urine analysis will bypass that issue. And I'm finding that when people begin detoxing their metals and chemicals, their health symptoms begin to reduce, their diseases begin to reverse or improve at the very least, and autism can be reversed as well or improved. And I found this with my own daughter. You know, I think I was very toxic, like many mothers today, and my daughter was diagnosed with autism at 3 years old. And when she finally began exhibiting symptoms, and she had very severe aluminum toxicity. I began detoxing that, and within about a year and a half, she's now normal. You know, a psychiatrist diagnosed her with autism. I think it's kind of a garbage can term for kids who are developmentally delayed. But after I detoxed her, and she had a lot of physical therapy, occupational therapy rather, and I went to a special school to really develop her language. Now she's normal, and she's in a normal school, and I'm very, very thankful for that. But I test a lot of children today, a lot of babies that are, at least that they don't have adrenal fatigue, they have other very severe heavy metal toxicities. And I'm finding today that pretty much all the children I test have a lot of health issues, and it doesn't bode well for the population at large, I think, because of how increasingly toxic our environment has come. People are going to their doctors, they're getting medications, they're not getting relief. And it's because the underlying root cause of their health issues are not being addressed. The underlying cause of their fatigue is not being addressed. And it's the heavy metal and chemical toxicity and mineral deficiencies because of our nutrient deficient diet.
So heavy metals have been around forever. Obviously, this is something that, you know, you're finding, you know, these are trace elements, things that are found in nature. And so this is something that the body has dealt with in minute quantities. And, you know, if you're in a certain region, maybe kind of greater quantities back in the day if you were unfortunate, not like you knew what was in your groundwater. But what processes? Are we talking about coal burning power plants? Are we talking about exhaust coming out of trucks and cars? What is it that's really kind of tilting the scales over here in the modern world that's adding this burden that we're now being saddled with?
Well, these heavy metals have always been in the Earth's crust, but now today industry is digging them up, using them in computers, using the metals for various things, industry, copper and wires, what have you. And so they're being unleashed into our environment and our bodies, while they were able to handle some of it, maybe back in Paleolithic times, the bodies were much stronger and healthier, much more nutrient dense diets. And so our detox pathways worked very well and they had to deal with very little. Our bodies, however, have not evolved to handle the level of toxicities and chemicals in the environment. So, I mean, the heavy metals are a huge, huge issue, but add these 80,000 chemicals, and the CDC has established we have on average 500 chemicals in our body. These are done by, the research the CDC has done. Our livers and our bodies are just not able to handle that. These are
Yeah.
chemicals our livers have never seen before. They don't know how to metabolize them. Add the heavy metals on top of that. Add very severely nutrient deficient diets on top of that. Even if you eat organic, even if you eat a perfectly organic diet, it's all fresh from the farmer's market, it's still usually grown with NPK fertilizers. They just have three minerals in them: nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. I talked to all my stalls at the farmers market. They say they're organic, no pesticides, but they're grown in nutrient deficient soil. So all those three factors are combining to make us extremely toxic and extremely sick.
Yeah, that's kind of a bummer because it's a perfect storm, right? Where we're replacing some of the good stuff that we've needed with stuff that we obviously don't need any more of, and that's kind of a really bad combination. I want to look at how we analyze this. I know, sometimes it's hard with urine because you have to take certain substances to like draw out these heavy metals. And I think this is a piece that I think our listeners need to understand is how these heavy metals get stored in the fat or the bone or the brain, and how well they hide because the body doesn't know what to do with it. And then let's look at hair versus urine versus serum blood. Like, how do we see this stuff? How do we know what's actually going on in the body?
Yes, well, the body, when we, take in these heavy metals and chemicals, usually they're very swiftly put into different depository places in the body, like the bones. The body puts lead in the bones, and it goes into our brain and goes into our fat. And a lot of people will have to gain more fat to be able to store all these metals. So if you're starting to lose weight, you can actually be detoxing quite a bit at the same time. But when it's really almost useless to test the blood for heavy metals because, like I said, once you are exposed to lead or another metal, the body puts it, it's only floating around for maybe a few days, maybe 30 days, depending on the metal, and then it's stored away. So it's not harming the organs or, other bodily processes. So one of the best ways to test for heavy metals, and one of the cheapest ways, is with a hair mineral analysis. So that's the initial screening tool that I like to use. It's very, very accurate. But however, there's no test that shows all the heavy metals you have in your body. For instance, a hair mineral analysis, you cut off about an inch of hair close to your scalp, and that will show you what's depositing into the hair over the past 3 months. And so that works great for most people. However, there are some people that are so exhausted, so fatigued, have a chronic fatigue for years, a decade, 2 decades. They just don't have the energy to detox, so nothing may be coming out in the hair. And I see this, somewhat often. And there are some people that genetically they're not able to put certain metals in the hair, and then all the metals are not tested on a hair mineral analysis. So for many clients, I suggest doing a urine metals analysis, and this tests more metals. And you also do a push test where you're taking certain chelators. A lot of doctors only use DMSA, and that's only going to get divalent heavy metals. So that's only going to get a certain subset of metals like mercury and cadmium and lead and things like that. But there's other heavy metals to consider. So I prefer to give them biosil and glycine. And glycine's a sulfuric compound, a sulfuric amino acid, and that will help to get the trivalent heavy metals like aluminum, arsenic, tin, thallium, and the glycine helps to get more. So it's more of a robust kind of push we are chelating all different kinds of metals, and then you pee for 24 hours in a cup, and then you are able to see a lot more metals. So I like to use those two in conjunction. And then there's the fecal metals test. That's great. Cadmium comes out a lot better in a fecal metals test. And they're great to use all in conjunction to get a complete picture of what kind of supplement mineral program people need, a customized mineral supplement program, and what kind of chelators and perhaps DMSA and whatnot that they need to get rid of all their heavy metals.
Let's talk about this for a second because I think it's an important piece. We've talked about it in the show before, but this yo-yo weight loss that happens as people lose weight. So this stuff gets stored in fat. One of the places it gets stored, and then all of a sudden you decide it's it's beach season and I'm going to lose some weight, and you do whatever you do to lose the weight, and then all of a sudden the stuff comes back out of the fat cells that have now been lysed or exploded, if you will. And it's got to go somewhere. So it then sometimes signals the thyroid to say, hey, slow down and store more fat because I got to put this somewhere, which sucks if you're interested in not being fat. But the other part, which is I think a lot more challenging, is that sometimes the fat was the best option you had to store it, because now it's back out on the streets, and it's going to end up in your brain. And so what dangers are there in doing this wrong? I think this is important because I think everyone's out there trying to detox and chelate and do all this stuff, but there are right and wrong ways of doing this, and you can get yourself into a lot of trouble if you kind of partially detox and then park the bad guys somewhere worse.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why it's really important when you're detoxing, you need to mineralize your body. Because minerals and metals will occupy the same enzyme binding sites, kind of have some of the same uses in the body. And if you're mineral deficient, the body will have to retain some metals for various repair processes and whatnot in the body. So you want to be mineralizing as part of your detox program, taking just the basic minerals. Multi-mineral is fine, but ideally, customized supplement program is better. And you want to have a sensible daily detox regime. I like infrared saunas because if you are losing weight or you're doing any kind of other detox program, you have to use an infrared sauna. It's one of the best ways to sweat out all these chemicals through your skin. So it kind of takes the burden off your liver. And it's so effective at detoxing so many different kind of chemicals. And so I had a friend that was losing weight. She lost over 100 pounds. And she did it very, very rapidly. And I feel like slow and steady wins the race. That's kind of the general mantra for everything that you do in life. But she was doing it very, very rapidly. And she developed a cyst at the base of her spine that kept growing, that she had to have surgically removed. And it was all those toxins that were being deposited in that cyst, apparently.
Wow.
But that's my theory, at least.
Wow.
But a lot of people that are losing weight rapidly, they can get headaches and not feel well, etc. And they think, oh, it's because I'm on this low calorie diet or all the exercise they're doing that's making them so tired. But a lot of it can be chemical, detox as well.
So what about all this nature cure stuff? I mean, I know a lot of people, the answer to everything is a green smoothie and a coffee enema. How does that fit into this model? And, can it address some of the heavy metal stuff, or are we missing a lot of it because it's just not chelating?
Yes. Well, I'm not into, sometimes I do like clients to do green juices and whatnot, but definitely not into juice fasting. Juice fasting is really popular. However, juice fasting, when you stop eating, you stop using energy for digestion. That's a vast amount of energy that you're using. And then your body goes to town doing some autophagy and detoxing heavy metals and things like that. So you start mobilizing metals and things like that. But you have to have fiber to bind the heavy metals to take them out of the body. So that could be bypassed. Maybe you're doing a juice fast, taking some modified citrus pectin. At least you have some binders and some fiber to remove them. But juice fast by itself, I'm not a fan. I am a fan of coffee enemas, a huge fan of that. So we can have a little coffee talk right now about coffee. I think they're an amazing thing to do because, they're not so popular. There's some people that are, against it for various reasons, but I've seen just in my practice and with other practitioners, client base, that they're one of the best ways to detox the liver. Our livers are so toxic, and is almost like the weak link in the chain that we have to fix if you're going to be able to detox your body and heal your body of any kind of health issue or symptom or disease. And a lot of people's emotional issues and cancers and other health issues relate back to liver health. And so coffee enemas are one of the best ways to mechanically detox the liver. They dilate all the little capillaries in your liver and allow it to dump its toxic contents into the intestines for elimination. So a lot of people think the enemas are for eliminating it out of the colon, but that's really just a byproduct. It's really more for detoxing the liver. And you do that over and over and over, and your liver gets to working really well. And so I think it's one of the best ways. If you tolerate caffeine, if you can tolerate the coffee enemas, I think they're one of the best things you can do to clean up that liver and to help your body detox.
You said something there that I want to just kind of stay on for a quick second. Multiple use of coffee enemas. So we're not talking about like, oh my God, it was so great, I got this one coffee enema and my life changed. But you're saying it takes a series of applications of this in order to dilate the capillaries, get the junk out, move it through the bowel, do it again, do it again. So how, like, obviously the question of how much and how often depends on how toxic and how overloaded you are. But are we talking about, like, for a typical American Western person who's, been exposed to the stuff that we're all exposed to once a week for a couple months? I mean, what does that look like?
Yeah, well, these are very gentle techniques. So you have to do them fairly frequently and for quite a while to really see a lot of the benefits. I mean, many people, when they do one coffee enema, they feel really good afterwards. I mean, you feel like $1,000,000, but you are kind of stimulated from the caffeine and the coffee. So that's part of it for sure. But when people are doing coffee enemas, they can have mineral loss. There can be some side effects. So I like people to add salt to some sea salt, Himalayan salt, to the coffee enema to, reduce mineral loss. Some people like to do them every single day. And I think if you do them daily or every other day for a year, that's when a lot of people really feel like their livers start working. When they really kind of hit the ground running, they've hit kind of a milestone, and they can really see a huge difference in their health. I generally recommend people do them every other day. I think every day is a little bit too much. And the coffee enemas do strip the lining of your colon, which is desirable to a degree. But if you have leaky gut, they might not be the best thing for you because they do strip that lining a little bit. So there are some considerations. Some people are more sensitive to mineral loss than others, and I can see that in a hair mineral analysis and tell people to kind of slow down on the coffee enemas. But generally, every other day, every 2 to 3 days, I think it's a good pace.
Okay, so that's a pretty heavy lift. I mean, if you're asking me to pipe coffee up my ass every other day for a year, that better make me taller and grow back my hair and something. So how toxic do you need to be to take that on? I mean, this is a commitment, obviously.
Yeah. Well, and not everyone, especially men, are usually not so amenable to doing the coffee enemas. So I tell them get in the sauna. Like you have to do something. You have to either do the sauna or coffee enemas or both. So everyone kind of picks their little routine that they like. But even if you do them just once a week, I mean, it's something. It's progress. You're helping your liver out in some way. Our livers need help. Even if you just take a supplement, that can be helpful as well. But I know it is a big commitment, but our bodies are very toxic today. I mean, without exception, everyone has toxins in their body. The question is, how much of this toxin do you have in your body? How many heavy metals? What heavy metals? How many chemicals, or the amounts of chemicals that you have in your body? And they are, without question, causing our health issues. So I have some clients that are very sick, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to get better. So it just, like, for someone who, like yourself, you're not really sick, you don't really have any major health issues, for instance, you're not going to be as motivated. So it depends on everyone's kind of personal preferences and the amount of motivation that they have to do the protocols that I recommend.
Yeah, one of the things that I see a lot in LA in particular is it's so fashionable to be on a detox. You know, everyone's detoxing. Now when you're saying I'm detoxing, it means I'm taking it easy on food because I feel fat, right? And so it's like becomes synonymous with dieting. And so everyone's detoxing, but at the same time, I feel like people are detoxing and retoxing within the same window. So what are the things, obviously certain pharmaceuticals, obviously alcohol, what are the things that like overtly offend the liver that really kind of stymie this process to begin with? I mean, because we're talking about cleaning something out that's already dirty, but it would really help to not get it as dirty as well. So what do we need to avoid?
Well, definitely sugar is probably the biggest problem. It sneaks in so many different places. So, when you are eating sugar, your liver has to produce cholesterol to repair the damage that sugar causes. Sugar is like little shards of glass. It cuts the insides of your arteries. And when that happens, the body has to repair that. The liver produces cholesterol. Refined grains do the same thing. They break down into glucose, sugar, have the same kind of, process. So that makes the liver work really, really hard. And while your liver is dealing with that 911, it can't detox. So you have to try to give the liver a break on all the things that cause it to overwork so that it can get to the actual job of detoxing your body. Of course, alcohol is a huge problem. Alcoholics, 90% of them have fatty liver disease. And about 10% of the US has fatty liver disease. So that's a big problem. And coffee enemas are really helpful to eliminate that problem. But other things that affect the liver are like I said, refined grains, those are very problematic. And certain foods that are typically considered healthy, like a lot of fish has mercury in it. That's really problematic. I always tell people to reduce shellfish and large fish. I prefer the smaller fish like salmon and sardines and herring, mackerel, anchovies, a little gross fish that nobody wants to eat. But those have the least amount of time to accumulate mercury. So those are the more ideal choices. But today, most people that I'm dealing with, their livers are just a mess. And so we want to do everything we can to take care of our liver and to help it detox.
So this is something that actually I was tripping on the other day because I know I'm supposed to have mackerel and sardines and all these kind of little disgusting fish, as you mentioned. But then you go to like Trader Joe's or Whole Foods and they come in like a tin or an aluminum can, and then you're told that that stuff is lined with like bisphenol or some other crap. So it's just like, what am I supposed to like, put my hand in a pond and grab this stuff? Like, how do I even get this fish delivered to me without getting some other heavy metal exposure?
Yeah, well, that is a problem. Anything you eat in a tin can will deliver tin to you. And that is very problematic. It's one of the biggest causes of fatigue that I see in my clients. It reduces the mitochondria's ability to make energy, basically. And the mitochondria are little energy powerhouses. But so tin cans, anything you're eating in a tin can, especially if it's acidic, like tomato juice or tomato sauce rather, or anything that's acidic, are going to be, etching away at that tin and have more tin contained in it, more contaminated with tin. Ideally, fish markets have everything kind of, nothing stored in tin cans. So that's ideal. But every once in a while, tin is okay. Eating sardines out of tin cans every once in a while is okay. There are some sardines that are in ceramic tins, so to speak, that are in ceramic containers. So those are ideal. Those are hard to find though, but they are around. You can find them. But ideally, you want to avoid eating food out of tin cans as much as possible.
Yeah, it's such, it's tough, isn't it? It's
You
really
can't live in a
tough.
bubble. You can't live in a
Yeah.
bubble. You're going to make some exceptions somewhere. You're going to pick your poison somewhere, but you just want to watch out and try to reduce intake of toxins where you can.
Yeah. So this is, I mean, look, I mean, for our listeners who are listening to this right now, look, not trying to bum you out. You know what I mean? Like this is kind of the state of the world, and this is why my next movie is on conscious capitalism, because I support companies that are not dumping mercury into the ocean. And at every point we're looking at ways to clean up supply chains so that the toxins aren't everywhere, exposing your daughter and my son and all of our kids, the next generations, to all the stuff that they didn't really have anything to do with. They just kind of like walked into a dirtier world. So in terms of consuming products, obviously, let's look at what we're doing and what kind of green footprint they have. But what I'm hearing here is that everyone's toxic, so let's not assume that. What would be the best ways for us to get tested so we can just have some hard clinical data to then kind of run off of? Because then, look, I'm not going to do coffee enemas just because, but if I get some data that says, look, dude, you lit up like a Christmas tree over here, then I'm much more inclined to do it and then look at my next test or my series of tests to make sure that we're trending in the right direction and we're resolving the problem.
Yeah, well, I think the best way to do that is do with a hair analysis and HTMA, and also couple that with a urine metals push test, urine metals analysis. That's one of the best ways to find out what heavy metals you have. There's also a new test by Great Plains Lab called GPL Tox, and that tests chemicals in your body. Unfortunately, most tests only test about 15, maybe 10 chemicals, but this tests 168. So that's great. You can see the chemicals that you have. Almost don't really need to do that because we know that we've got, 500 chemicals on average in our body. That's very well established. So like I said, for the metals, do a hair test and urine metals analysis. And people can test their livers. There are liver function tests. You can test, liver enzyme testing. You can test how well your liver is detoxing, etc. Some people have problems with phase 1 with breaking down toxins. Some people have problems with phase 2 with taking out the garbage once those toxins have been broken down. There's tests you can do for that. But ultimately, you just want to see what your heavy metal load is, and that pretty much gives you the answer right there.
Okay, so what's if I wanted to do this on the cheap? I would say, okay, I'm assuming I'm toxic. I'm just going to do everything fine. But then, what is like the kind of cost to getting in? Like, I mean, we're talking about $10,000 worth of tests. Like, if I'm just a curious consumer, what's it going to take? How much money do I have to pull out of my pocket to have these answers?
Well, when I do a hair mineral analysis with clients, my program is called Mineral Power. I charge $400, about $399 for that. But it's a complete program. You get a complete customized supplement program based on your hair mineral analysis, based on your unique body chemistry, and also custom chelators based on what heavy metals that you had, etc. So it's more of a program. There's places you can go to get a hair mineral analysis on Amazon, the internet for inexpensively. I have just the hair test alone by itself. It's like $135 if you just want to do that. But, it takes a few years to learn how to read them. I mean, you can certainly
Right.
see your heavy metals on the hair test itself. But to really learn how to read them and understand what it means and to supplement correctly, that takes a skilled professional to do that.
It takes a brain. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, someone who's actually studied this stuff. It kind of reminds me of this whole trend that came with 23andMe. Everyone's rushing out to get their genome tested, but then I think it was the FDA or one of the kind of big brother organizations was like, hey, you're not allowed to give interpretation results. So people just have all these weird sequences, and they're like, what the hell do I do with this? Right?
Yeah.
Because they don't have the training to read it, and so it created a lot more stress. And so having information is one thing; knowing what to do with the information, that's a whole other thing. And then in terms of for me, I have an organic garden, right? And I have kind of general organic fertilizer that I put in there, and we try to compost and all that stuff. I mean, we're trying to stay as clean as we can on everything, so at least we have minerals in our food. But you're saying a safe bet is to take a multi-mineral formula, or better yet, take a custom mineral supplementation program.
Yeah, because sometimes when people do a hair test, yeah, they have some low minerals and whatnot, and taking a general multi-mineral is good insurance policy. But many times people have copper toxicity or they have calcium toxicity. They've got calcium that's built up in their tissues. They probably still need calcium at that point, but the issue is that you just don't know until you test. So it's better to test, not guess, because you can get a customized supplement program to figure out how do you balance these minerals. If you have really high calcium, and you can see what minerals that you're losing and that you may need more of. A lot of people are taking magnesium, but they're not taking nearly enough that they need. A lot of people aren't taking the right forms of minerals. So a lot of people need help with their supplement program. Like myself, before I started my program, I had just this huge shopping bag of supplements. I spent thousands of dollars in supplements, and I really didn't know what I was doing. And it takes a really long time. There's a very steep learning curve to learn what kind of supplements are best and what kind you need and what are maybe marketing gimmicks. And, it's really helpful for people to talk with a professional and streamline their supplements to only what they need and more, yeah, even better, what they need for just their specific body chemistry. But it's great that you're growing your own food in a garden. That's one of the only ways that people are going to be able to eat food that has minerals in it. Just like, yeah, with organic farming, they have these massive farms. There's no financial incentive for them to mineralize their soil. There's restrictions on them using manure, unless you're like a biodynamic organic farm. So really, the manure is what's going to give it that mineral content.
Mm-hmm.
And I know my uncle is a gardener. He has a huge garden. He's tilled it for 30 years. And I mean, these vegetables he makes, they're unbelievable. I mean, this broccoli, it's dark, dark green. It reeks like it. When he gave me some of this broccoli, it smelled up my entire car. It smelled up my entire refrigerator. It was just exploding with flavor in my mouth. And that's not what you're getting at Whole Foods. That's not
No.
what you're getting at the farmer's market because it's mineral deficient, it's deficient in sulfur. That sulfur is needed to detox. So I could go on and on and on, but you're just not going to be able to get what you need, what your body needs to function and detox from regular food. You're just not.
Yeah, it sucks that it's come to this, but at the same time, I think Thomas Jefferson just rolled over in his grave right now because, one of the early arguments in American history was whether we should have an agrarian base or a manufacturing base, and then Madison and the New York guys kind of won that argument. But Jefferson's whole thing was a country that can't feed itself is kind of doomed. And we've run into this place where even our organic farmers, it's hard enough to make a living, and so I don't want to point any fingers. They're just, they're trying to do the right thing, but we've beat the crap out of everything, and so there's no minerals left in the soil. And so for me, it's like I'm now that I'm gardening for the last couple of years, it's like, wow, this is a thing. And every year my soil gets better. Every year our crops get better. And so you put love into the land, and you are connected with the land. And it's very hard and rare to find that. So in the interim, take some mineral supplements and stop, walking around New York City just huffing paint kind of thing. And then, a long-term solution to this would be, a cleaner world that we can co-create. And I categorically reject anyone who says you're being a dreamer, because then I'm saying you're being suicidal, right? And right. And then what can we do right now in our lives to stop becoming more toxic and start really engaging in having a policy towards putting clean things in our body, right? And so, what do you do for your daughter? What do you do at home, knowing all this that you know?
Well, I like the fact that you're doing your next film on conscious capitalism because you do vote with your dollars. If you don't buy the Tide to clean your laundry detergent, which is to clean your clothes, which is full of chemicals and phthalates and all kinds of toxic chemicals, but instead choose Charlie's soap or choose some other like natural, whatever the brand may be, choose some natural products. Then the other companies are going to have to at some point follow suit. They want to go where the dollars are going, obviously. But in my home, I choose all natural products. Some work better than others. So it took a little bit of ramping up time to figure out which products work the best, which clean the best. But I have an amazing array of cleaning products, of detergents, of they're all natural body soaps that are used with saponified coconut oil instead of sodium sulfates. They're used to make that rich lather that are used in shampoos, which are toxic. Very, very conscious of anyone coming in my home. I ask them not to wear perfume because perfume is petroleum based and has phthalates in it, and it's toxic. The people are walking around this toxic cloud. You want to avoid them. But there's a lot of things I do. I plan to do a garden at some point, but I haven't done that quite yet. But I try to buy organic all the time. I try to eat fresh, my fresh food all the time. And sometimes that entails going to restaurants frequently that I know are using olive oil and sea salt and pastured meats. I'm luckily in LA, there's quite a few of them that are doing that. So it's just about those small choices, and it can be overwhelming to overhaul everything at once. So, and there's a learning curve. So you just take it slow, one area at a time. Like, okay, this month I'm going to focus on throwing out all my toxic chemical cleaning products and finding alternatives that work for me. And
Yep.
then maybe the next month, then you focus on, whatever it may be, throwing out your toxic makeup and purchasing, healthier makeup that doesn't have petroleum and, sparkly aluminum for your sparkly eyeshadow in it, and things of that nature. And it's just one thing at a time.
So, can I ask you to like run through your house at some point in the next couple days and just give us a list of like the clean products that you've swapped out? Like what does Wendy use? Like, can you put a list together and we'll slap it on well.org, just because hell, you went and did some of this homework and that's great. And I know Environmental Working Group, I know a lot of people have done all this stuff. I just want to see what you've used and what you've done, because you've spent a lot of time and you had a scare. I mean, let's face it, like your daughter started developing autistic symptoms, and so there's nothing like that to get Mama Bear to like step up. But you've already done a lot of the groundwork, so it'd be really helpful, I think, for our listeners. And we'll put it, so if you're listening to this on a podcast, go to well.org and find this story, and we'll put it in with the blog that's tied with the video of this, just so we could help be supportive of our listeners to kind of take some of those steps and move in the right direction. Is that cool?
But you know what I was gonna, yeah, I'd love to do that. And what I was gonna say is, what's kind of sad is that I started studying this stuff and implementing detoxing and greening my home like about 4 years before my daughter was diagnosed with autism. I've been taking out the toxins for a while. I had stopped the intake of toxins into my body, but I had not detoxed my body. I didn't do pre-pregnancy planning where I was detoxing my body. But fortunately, I was able to do it for my daughter in time, and I've done it with myself. But it takes a while to get the metals and chemicals out of your body.
So what I'm hearing is you got to stop the bleeding. You got to go back in time and clean up whatever the toxins are in your system, and then you got to avoid, obviously, the exposure into the future, and that's for future generations. And there's a whole other conversation, a whole other show about prenatal medicine and what it takes to bring a healthy child into this world. There's like 200 something known chemicals found in umbilical cord blood, and and that's not necessarily mom's fault. Mom was also born into a toxic world, and so it's just it's just a difficult situation. And so we could either be an ostrich about it and then just go about our business and end up sick and toxic and all this other kind of stuff, or we can just step in and start doing the right thing for our families, and one step at a time really start cleaning out the kind of karmic history that the Industrial Revolution has left for us here.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can clean out your body. I mean, there's only so much you can control. These toxins and metals are in our air, food, and water. So you just, you make choices where you can, take it one step at a time. And, even once you're detox, you still need to have a daily detox regimen. Unfortunately, whether it's your food choices or doing an infrared sauna, you have to be thinking about it on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's just good hygiene nowadays. And so hopefully with our efforts and everything we're doing, we could change the global supply chain and clean this thing up, and within 50 to 100 years have a very different kind of conversation about what the planet looks like. But in the interim, don't poison yourself by taking things that your body doesn't know what to do with, I think sounds like the moral of the story. Wendy, how can people find you? I love the fact that you're like a fierce mama bear who stepped in and had to learn this and step into it for personal reasons, and now you've helped thousands of people. So I'd love for our listeners to be able to find you.
Yeah, well, my main website is liveto110.com. I have lots of free information and a podcast on there about, diet, lifestyle, and detox. And detox is my favorite subject by far, because I think it's so relevant and so important. And I have a new website coming up, mineralpower.com. And I also have an online health program, just a general online health program called bodybiorehab.com.
Fantastic. Well, you've been busy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming. This has been great. It's been really helpful. This stuff that we all hear about, and it's hard to know where to go and what the answers are. So thank you for digging them up for us, and keep doing the good work that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pedram. Thank you so much. It was really great meeting you too.
Yeah, real pleasure. Thank you. All right, this is Dr. Pedram Shojai, the Health Bridge. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, we'll grab Wendy's secrets to home health document. We'll have her put together what she, kind of has replaced all the nasty stuff with good stuff, and we'll throw it into a blog that's tied to this video on well.org. So if you're just listening in audio, come find it. And if you're on the video, chances are it's already there. Thanks again, Wendy, and we'll see you in the next show.